in South Carolina with the intention of driving home two messages. He's loyal to the state that saved his campaign in 2020, and he's determined to win back black voters.
I'm determined to give all those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind in America a shot again, a fair shot at making a living, taking care of their children, starting a business, being able to buy a home, build real wealth for generations to come.
Biden also reiterated his willingness to take extreme measures to curtail immigration on the U.S.-Mexico border as lawmakers continue talks on a reform of the country's immigration policy, saying that he would shut down the border right now if such a bill were to pass. The demonstration marched toward the Ministry of Defense, calling for new elections and criticizing efforts to bring home hostages that are still held by Hamas amid the ongoing war. Security forces, including mounted police, seek to block some of the crowd on their route. Footage also showed some protesters being detained. A separate rally was held outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Caesarea as pressure on his administration builds. He had earlier given a speech pushing back against an International Court of Justice ruling to limit death and destruction in the military's Gaza offensive. More than 100 Israeli hostages are still believed to be in Hamas detention since being captured by the militant group.
Patriots, the biased corporate media is working overtime with its propaganda machine, trying to use a deficit-juiced GDP report to pretend that the Biden economy is working for Americans, especially Americans of modest means. Of course, the reality is the opposite. Real wages have crashed. Housing affordability crumbles to the worst levels ever. Inflation remains persistently stubborn, particularly services inflation, and maybe most important of all, the American people, again, especially working class folks, continue to reject the realities of Bidenomics. Now, let's know the truth, realize the actual numbers, see my article for those details, and most importantly of all, Patriots, let's change this dismal economic trajectory come November.
Report came from nonprofit openthebooks.org. They obtained the data from a Freedom of Information Act request.
Data shows that spending on the Office of Refugee Resettlement reached $10.9 billion last year. It was up by $2 billion compared to the year before.
Most of the spending explosion came from grants under the agency's Refugee and Entrance Assistance Program. This figure jumped from $33 million in 2021 to $616 million last year.
The program provides services such as emergency housing assistance, work authorizations, public assistance benefits, medical screening, school enrollment, employment, and mental health referrals and legal assistance.
That's crazy.
Mexican authorities are finding more and more U.S. military-grade weapons in the hands of drug cartels, and the Mexican government wants an urgent investigation into it.
Mexico's army is finding belt-fed machine guns, rocket launchers, and grenades that are not sold for civilian use in the United States.
This poses a special challenge for Mexican authorities. The Mexican Army and Marines still have superior firepower, but the drug cartel's weaponry often now outclasses other branches of Mexican law enforcement.
There is one very important thing, and that is that the Defense Department has warned the United States about weapons entering Mexico that are for the exclusive use of the U.S. Army. It is very urgent that an investigation into this be carried out.
Hunter Biden's business associates will be testifying before members of Congress later this week. It's part of the House impeachment inquiry into President Biden. On Thursday, Mervyn Yan will testify behind closed doors before the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees. He worked with Hunter Biden through Chinese energy companies CEFC and Hudson West 3. And on Friday, Rob Walker will testify behind closed doors before both committees. Walker is known for working on a joint venture called Sinohawk Holdings. This was meant to partner up with CEFC. Both interviews will be transcribed. Yan and Walker's depositions come before Hunter Biden's own closed-door testimony scheduled for February 28th.
So I just heard that Joe Biden gave Texas a 24-hour warning or else. Or else what, motherfucker? Or else what? We don't take your threats down here in Texas seriously. Fuck you, Joe Biden, and the horse you think you can ride on. You can't even ride a fucking bike. Fuck out of here with your stupid ass, you anti-American piece of shit.
The Federal Reserve will decide on whether to raise interest rates. Newsnate's David Aid reports from Washington.
A House committee is set to hold an impeachment vote against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The House Homeland Security Committee has the vote scheduled for Tuesday. So far, all the Republicans on the committee said they plan to vote for the articles of impeachment, which would move the articles onto the full House floor. Republicans accuse Mayorkas of willful and systemic disregard for the rule of law related to his handling of security along the U.S.-Mexico border. Earlier this month, the Biden administration called the impeachment attempt a baseless and pointless political attack. A Senate committee is set to vote on subpoenas of 2 pharmaceutical executives. The Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee wants to hear from the execs about why drug prices are higher in the United States versus other countries. Committee Chairman Senator Bernie Sanders said the committee will vote on subpoenas for the CEOs at Johnson & Johnson and Merck, noting that the CEO of Bristol-Myers Squibb agreed to testify without a subpoena. The Federal Reserve is set to meet again and look at interest rates. A decision is expected to be announced on Wednesday afternoon. Most analysts expect that for a 4th straight time, the Reserve will leave rates right where they are. Rates were hiked 11 straight times going back to early 2022 as the Reserve tried to combat rising inflation. In Washington, I'm David Aid for Newsnet.
As the norm in a communist country, they then promoted communism in the web books, articles, and didn't know they had been taken in. A small number did see cracks in the edifice, but many of them then fell into another trap. They saw themselves as, quote, fellow travelers, and adopted the Chinese attitude of, quote, not airing dirty laundry in front of outsiders. Lacking the courage to tell the truth, they chose a shameful silence. Everyone is, quote, free and equal, where there is no oppression or expropriation, where there's great material abundance, where everyone gives according to their ability and receives according to their need, a heaven on earth, with every individual able to develop himself or herself freely. A human society of this sort exists only as fantasy, and that fantasy has been used as bait by the devil to deceive man. In reality, power falls in the hands of a small elite. Real communism is a totalitarian apparatus controlled by a small group who use their monopoly on power to suppress, enslave, and deprive the majority. 8. The devil's destruction of culture and morality. Communism teaches people to oppose belief in God and to cast out the divine. It simultaneously launches attacks on religions from the outside, while manipulating people to corrupt religion from the inside. Religions have been politicized, commercialized, and turned into entertainment. Numerous morally corrupt clergymen put forward fallacious interpretations of religious texts, misleading their followers, and going so far as to commit adultery with their lay members or even pedophilia. This chaos has left sincere religious believers bewildered and deprived of hope. Just a century ago, an unwavering belief in God was a sign of moral decency. Now, religious believers are considered foolish and superstitious. They keep their beliefs to themselves, not even discussing their faith among friends for fear of being mocked. Another important goal of communism is the destruction of the family, using ideas like gender equality and, quote, sharing wealth and wife. The 20th century, in particular, was host to modern feminist movements that promoted sexual liberation, the blurring of gender differences, attacks against the so-called patriarchy, and weakening the role of the father in the family. They changed the definition of marriage, promoted the legalization and legitimization of homosexuality, promoted the rights to divorce and to abortion, and used social welfare policies to effectively encourage and subsidize single parenthood. Over the last political exploited loopholes in the legal and political system.
Corruption in a bid to speed up its membership in the European Union and NATO. Officials from both blocs have demanded widespread anti-graft reforms before Kyiv can join them. We move now to Paris, where 2 climate activists hurled soup at the glass that is protecting the Mona Lisa. This comes amid protests by French farmers against several issues, including low wages. This video shows the group opening their thermoses and splashing orange soup on the bulletproof glass and the blue wall behind the painting. The women then crossed behind the protective wooden railing, stood on either side of the painting, and called for, quote, the integration of food into the general social security system, end quote. Members of the museum staff rushed, to hide the painting behind protective panels. Now returning stateside in Wichita, Kansas, police are asking for help to locate a stolen statue of baseball legend Jackie Robinson. The suspects, according to a statement from the Wichita Police Department, vandalized and removed nearly all of the bronze statue in McAdams Park on Wednesday night. Video surveillance shows nothing left at the crime scene but the statue's shoes. The department released a photo of the truck that they say they want in connection with the crime. The photo depicts a silver pickup with 4 doors and an extended cab. Anyone with information about the truck or the stolen statue is asked to call Wichita Police. All right, home for 6 years. Mike's body laid on a bed in the home that he once owned. Was it that she loved him too much to let him go? Probably not. It appears that it was more about the cash. Lynn and Kirk Ritter, Carol's daughter and son-in-law, hung onto the body and didn't report his death so that they could keep collecting and cashing his retirement checks. In total, the couple fraudulently collected over $215,000 in benefits. The fraud was only revealed when Kirk Ritter called to report Carol's death back in 2022. Police were immediately suspicious. It wasn't just the mummified body on the bed that seemed off. It was also that Carol's pacemaker revealed that he had died in 2016 at the age of 81. Family members used to wonder why Mike Carroll could never come to the phone or visit. The couple made up stories to cover up the death. Now they'll be telling their story to a judge. The couple is expected to appear in federal court this week to face charges of wire fraud and theft of government funds. All right, we've covered lots of weird collections in this segment, and we love a good world record story. This story combines both. A California man who has traveled extensively has amassed a collection of key cards from 1,136 different hotels. And that's a world record, you ask? Yes, it is. Morton Sorensen started traveling for business in the 90s and discovered that most hotels would allow him to keep the key card as a souvenir. So he started keeping the key cards. To be fair, he's serious about it. The collection is stored in albums and it's alphabetized, which made it pretty easy for Guinness World Record folks to verify that Sorensen's collection of key cards from 1,136 different hotels is indeed the largest in the world. There you go. From bow to stern, the Icon of the Seas is divided into 8 neighborhoods across 20 decks. The ship includes 6 water slides, 7 swimming pools, an ice skating rink, a theater, and more than 40 restaurants, bars, and lounges. The ship can carry up to 7,600 passengers at maximum capacity, along with 2,350 crew members. Royal Caribbean says every kilowatt used on the Icon of the Seas is scrutinized for energy efficiencies and emission reductions. And while cruises have hit an all-time high. Last year, 2023, there were 131 reported incidents compared to 87 in 2022. It is likely, though, that the numbers are much higher. Experts say that 2 out of 3 sexual assaults go unreported. Maritime lawyer Jack Hickey says the cruise lines do everything they can to hide crimes, including sex crimes. They are concerned about their images, and sex crimes are the most common onboard crimes for cruises. All right, coming up in just 60 seconds.